Okay, you want to know who else is stuck in the past? You are. You're so afraid of life hurting you again that you've stopped living. You're like a human mummy.
Mummies are human.
Not necessarily. Sure, magic, ancient and often evil, is usually the culprit behind the resurrection of the mummy, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes it could be aliens. Welcome to Unraveling the Mummy, Chapter 6, Science Fiction Mummies. If you haven't seen the other chapters, don't worry, you don't have to, but please do. They cover a bunch of different eras of mummy movies, the black and white Universal classics, all the way up to the Brendan Fraser movies. Each video is self-contained, so if you want, you can just watch this one by itself. I remember when Stargate came out in theaters and the melding of ancient Egypt and aliens seemed so cool, even if it didn't have a mummy in it. Today we're going to look at all of the science fiction movies with a mummy in them, but before we do that, we should take a look at what exactly is the connection between ancient Egypt and space aliens. This is a tough one to start. I really just wanted to talk about alignments of the pyramids to the stars and some rubbish about energy conduits or maybe other futuristic technology that scientists were using to connect ancient Egyptian stuff to aliens, and then we could neatly pivot to what this chapter is about: mummies in space, or mummies from space, or alien mummies, or really just basic science fiction mummy movies. You see how that all sounds fun and innocent? But instead, I end up reading up on stuff like pseudo-archaeology and angry comments by impassioned UFO conspiracy theorists. Why? Well, because some people are very upset and triggered when it's suggested that racism is behind the connection. I will now read my disclaimer for the episode. Please bear with me. So, this is a fair time to warn any sensitive viewers. If you think you're the type to get triggered by controversial opinions that differ from yours, please don't cry about it in the comments. You've been warned, and if you just want the fun movie stuff, feel free to jump ahead to insert time on screen. People that believe this passionately about aliens would then be hypocrites to be outraged when somebody puts forth something real and tangible like racism. You'd be a hypocrite because you need your freedom of speech for your conspiracy theories. Freedom of speech, a different opinion. Disclaimer over. So here's the rub. If we just stick to fictional sci-fi stories from the 1800s, I think we're all good. The idea of giants from Mars moving the blocks of stone themselves in the Edison stories is really just silly fun. I myself like the mission to Mars idea of aliens seeding intelligent life on all different planets throughout the galaxy. You could even write a story about how the ancient Egyptian gods were actually aliens from another planet and call that Stargate, and it'd be cool as fuck. The problem is when people, pseudo-archaeologists, the National Enquirer, a convicted fraudster, and the History Channel push these theories to the public despite them being roundly dismissed at large by the scientific community. It all starts with this German guy's book in 1969, Chariots of the Gods. No, he's Swiss. Anyway, I'm sure that most Swiss people are lovely, but this turd was a racist. I don't even want to read the examples given in this great article by Sarah E. Bond, an associate professor of history at the University of Iowa, but I will provide a link and this screen cap if you want to pause it. This is where pseudo-archaeology and pseudoscience comes in. Conspiracies by their nature can't be proven, otherwise they would be facts, right? Except this seems like a harmless one to all the white people. See, the crux of the issue really boils down to how we build authenticity or validity into the idea that ancient civilizations' accomplishments are not their own. It's so unbelievable that it should be seen as more likely that aliens did it, because there's no way indigenous people could be that smart.
I mean, like the pyramids. How did they move such massive pieces of stone without the aid of modern technology?
They had massive whips, Rimmer. Massive whips.
Potent combination of tabloids and television helped to make Don von Daniken's book a bestseller in the United States. Yeah, anything the National Enquirer endorsed and popularized is maybe not the most credible source. Perhaps if it was something credible like the History Channel, then maybe I could... What's that? Oh, he was on the History Channel? Well, that's something. Oh no. So the History Channel's not a credible institution? I mean, it is just people's opinions, but I will say this. There are two ways you can look at the situation. You can try and guess the intent of the people who came up with the theory. I mean, he wrote his bigotry down in books, so we really don't need to guess. But if you wanted to suggest he wasn't intending offense, I guess you could. Or you could look at the harm it caused by listening to the people it hurts and the possible damage that does. Look, I could say, if we all agree all human life originated in Africa and Egypt, and those more ancient civilizations in that part of the world which science does seem to endorse, then I feel as though I would be including myself in whatever genetic tampering was being suggested in a theory about aliens. But at the end of the day, I'm looking for results in material substance, reality. There's nothing to be gained by postulating wildly about the unprovable while discrediting and belittling the very real people that lived at that time, and then consequently their living ancestors today. For what? Fantasizing about aliens? Do I think alien conspiracists are all racist? No, of course not. That's stupid. But I also don't think that it really matters what the intent was if the results are the same. If I don't hate you, but I still hit you in the head with a rock, the damage is done just the same, right? It might be nice to know that it wasn't intentional on my part for our friendship, maybe, but it wouldn't change the number of stitches. What's perhaps the most interesting to me is that for every person offended that even suggesting aliens getting the credit for the achievements of other civilizations could undermine those civilizations historically and therefore contain a racist narrative, might remember that the entire concept of the mummy on screen and in literature as a fictitious monster was itself a creation of white colonizer guilt. A subconscious recognition of colonial crimes. Okay, now that that's over with, as I said, if we just stick to the fictitious mummy movies, we are okay. So Wikipedia tells me that Prisoners of the Sun in 2012 is actually a remake of Dawn of the Mummy, which we'll cover in the last chapter. I don't believe that this is the case. Prisoners of the Sun is written by Anthony Hickox with Peter Atkins and directed by Roger Christian, perhaps most infinitely known for directing the Battlefield Earth movie. Yeah, and I call BS on the claim that there is any direct connection between these two movies. Now, Wiki links a Dread Central article that Steve Barton wrote that says just that. It's a remake with no corroborating facts or story or who said that or anything. And the film itself is also not crediting any of this or as anything other than its own original Mummy story. So I'm going to call you out, Steve. I'm going to call you out, Steve Barton of Dread Central. Show us your cards, you scrub. I say you're a dirty liar and a cheat. I mean, there are no fashion models as there were in Dawn of the Mummy, and there were no aliens in Dawn of the Mummy. This film opens on a sci-fi premise of ancient Egyptians being visited by aliens. It's the opening title card. The alien mummies don't even really appear until over an hour in, and they don't get much screen time. The bulk of the movie is an uncompelling standard mummy excavation search for treasure in tombs kind of plot. Classic mummy tomb raiding adventure stuff. And then, like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it inexplicably becomes an alien movie. Now, Prisoners of the Sun opens with a prologue explaining the aliens' angle, so it's not like they spring it on us halfway through the movie. It's just that if that title card wasn't there, there would be little to no reason to think that this would be science fiction, except for maybe 10 minutes of screen time. The mummies look good, but they're woefully underserved in this film. Also, John Rhys Davies is in the movie, and he's also underserved. Assignment Terror, 1970. Aliens want to take over the human race, and they've decided that the best way to do this is by resurrecting Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and a mummy to terrorize people. That's their assignment. They're smart enough to animate fictional monsters, but not smart enough to see how preposterous such a plan would be. This is a Spanish production, and it's truly bizarre enough to be interesting. The entire concept is absurd, but absurd can make the best B-movies. I suppose the mummy isn't technically an alien in this production, but considering it's the alien technology and preposterous plan that resurrects him, I think that qualifies Assignment Terror to be on this list. Time Walker from 1982 is a slow burn about an alien that people think is a mummy and that comes back to life when exposed to radiation. It's not good. In fact, it was featured on Mystery Science Theater under its alternate title Being from Another Planet and was regarded by the host as one of the worst movies they watched on the show. I couldn't really disagree. It's pretty terrible. Rest assured, our last two examples are pretty great, although admittedly they're not theatrical movies. It's is Doctor Who. Doctor Who and the Pyramids of Mars. There are 2 examples of mummies in Doctor Who, and I'm honestly a little surprised there aren't more. Doctor Who is the longest running sci-fi TV series in history, I think. Our 2 examples are decades apart, so let's start with the earlier first one. In the 70s, Doctor Who was played by Tom Baker, the guy with the big hat and the long scarf. His companion during this adventure is the great Sarah Jane, and the villain is an ancient Egyptian god named Sutekh, who wishes to kill everyone and everything. This is refreshing for mummy stories. While Sutekh himself is not a mummy, he does have minions who are wrapped up like mummies, though they are bizarrely shaped and kind of clunky. This is classic Doctor Who, and I know some people might bristle at my inclusion of a TV series, but in the 70s, old Doctor Who stories were typically spread across 4 episodes, each 24 minutes, and so to watch the entire thing would be just over an hour and a half or so. I can't really make the claim for the second example, though. Doctor Who, The Mummy in the Orient Express. Doctor Who's brought back in the 2000s after a prolonged absence on television, and since its return has showcased a string of different doctors played by different actors. We have to wait until the 8th episode of Peter Capaldi's run to get our last example of a sci-fi mummy. The episode is titled Mummy on the Orient Express, and in it, the Doctor and Clara Oswald are on an Orient Express, but maybe not the one you're thinking of. This one goes through space. The murders start happening rather quickly and are committed by a mummy called the Foretold, who can only be seen by its victim, who dies within 66 seconds. The mystery to solve isn't who done it, but what is it and why is it killing everybody? The Mummy is cool, and the episode rockets along with the kind of manic energy usually attached to Doctor Who. Capaldi wasn't my favorite of the modern Doctor Who doctors, but this is a tight episode and it's well crafted. It's a great blend of seemingly disconnected elements like 1920s Agatha Christie train murders and mummies, along with space travel, computer-triggered death traps, and it gives this mummy a fully original origin story and reason for its deathless existence, and that keeps it pretty fresh. So there we have the breakdown of all the science fiction movies to feature mummies. Honestly, I thought there would be more, so if I missed any good ones, please post them in the comments, you know what it is. Now, I didn't just end this chapter on the Doctor Who episodes because they were the best examples, in my opinion, of the alien mummy concepts, but of course, they are. But also because I thought that it would be a nice segue to the next chapter, which is children's movies that feature mummies. Doctor Who could have also been in that chapter, being a favorite show of generations of children, but I thought the sci-fi angle was more distinctive for Doctor Who. So for the rest, you'll have to wait until the next video.